Opening script: The Path of True Prosperity. My dear friends, let me begin with a question. When you hear the word prosperity, what comes to your mind first? For many of us, it's money, possessions, or perhaps the recognition we receive from society. We think of success in terms of the house we own, the car we drive, or the title on our business card. And while these things can bring comfort, I want you to pause and ask yourself, are they enough to guarantee true happiness? Because if wealth alone could buy peace, then those with the largest bank accounts would be the most content. But we know this isn't always true. In fact, how many times have we seen stories of people who seem to have it all yet still feel restless, lonely, or unsatisfied? It's a reminder that material prosperity is only one layer of life, and not the deepest one. True prosperity, the kind that cannot be stolen by time or circumstance, begins within. It is when your heart feels light, when your body is free from the burden of endless craving, and when your actions align with truth and compassion. Imagine waking up each day not chasing after more, but living in harmony with yourself and the world around you. That is the prosperity that lasts. In Buddhism, there is a clear path that leads to this kind of richness of the spirit. It's called the Noble Eightfold Path. It's not about renouncing everything you own or rejecting the world. It's about living rightly, seeing clearly, thinking wisely, speaking truthfully, acting with kindness, working with integrity, putting effort in the right direction, staying mindful in each moment, and cultivating a steady, peaceful mind. Think about it. If your vision of life is clouded, if your thoughts are filled with greed or anger, if your words harm, or if your work causes suffering, how can prosperity truly blossom? Even with great wealth, such a life feels heavy. But when each step of your life is guided by clarity, compassion, and awareness, prosperity is no longer just an external achievement. It becomes the very atmosphere you live in. Here's a way to see it more simply. Picture a tree. Its fruit is what we often call prosperity, the sweetness, the comfort, the joy. But those fruits depend on roots you cannot see. If the roots are unhealthy, the tree cannot flourish, no matter how much you water it from above. The Eightfold Path is like nourishing those hidden roots, aligning our inner life so that the outer life can naturally bear good fruit. So I invite you to reflect. When was the last time you felt truly wealthy, not because of a paycheck, but because of a moment of peace? Maybe it was a quiet walk in nature. Maybe it was a heartfelt conversation with someone you love. Maybe it was simply breathing deeply and realizing, in that instant, nothing was missing. That is the taste of inner prosperity. As we walk together through this series on the Eightfold Path, remember this truth: real abundance is not about piling up more possessions. It is about living rightly, right vision, right thought, right speech, right action. The Eightfold Path is not just philosophy. It is a practical map toward a life that is full, free, and unshakably prosperous. Part 1. Right view: seeing clearly to recognize the truth. Let me share with you a thought. There are people who spend their whole lives searching for gold, yet never notice the treasure that already lies within their own hearts. Isn't that curious? We are often so busy chasing something out there that we overlook the richness that's been here all along. There's an old story about a farmer. Every day, he looked at his land and thought it wasn't good enough. He dreamed of better soil, somewhere far away. So he spent years searching, buying little pieces of land in different places, hoping one would finally give him what he wanted. But he never found peace. What he didn't realize was that right beneath his own field, there was a fresh underground spring, a source of water that could have nourished his crops and brought him all the abundance he longed for. He never saw it, because he was always looking elsewhere. This story is simple, but it carries a deep truth. Without the right view, we can spend a lifetime chasing illusions, never realizing the treasure already within us. In Buddhism, right view means learning to see life as it truly is, not through the fog of desire or fear, but through the clarity of wisdom. It is seeing that everything arises from cause and effect, that nothing lasts forever, and that what we call self is not a solid, unchanging thing. At first, these ideas might sound distant, or even a little unsettling. But think about it. Haven't you noticed how everything in life changes? Your moods, your body, your relationships, even your dreams. To expect them to stay fixed is like expecting the seasons to never shift. Right view doesn't make life colder, it makes life clearer. Let me ask you, how often do we suffer not because of what's happening, but because of the way we see what's happening? We lose a job and immediately label it as disaster, yet later it may turn out to be the doorway to something better. We hold on to anger at someone, convinced they are our enemy, yet if we saw their own pain clearly, maybe compassion would arise instead. Right view doesn't change the world outside, it changes how we perceive it. And when perception changes, so does our experience of reality. I remember once speaking with a friend who was going through a divorce. He kept saying, "My life is ruined. I've lost everything." But slowly, with time, he began to see differently. Instead of seeing only the loss, he began to recognize the freedom to grow, the chance to heal, the opportunity to rebuild. The facts didn't change, what changed was his view. And with that change came peace. This is why right view is the foundation of true prosperity. Without it, we are like the farmer digging in the wrong places, always restless, always searching. With it, we begin to see clearly that our actions have consequences, that chasing what cannot last only brings suffering, and that letting go opens the door to joy. So I invite you to reflect, what gold have you been chasing outside yourself, while overlooking the living spring within? What would it mean for you to see with fresh eyes today? Because prosperity doesn't begin with money, status, or possessions. It begins with right view, with learning to see clearly the truths of impermanence, of cause and effect, of the deeper self that is not bound by clinging. When we see this, life stops being a desperate search. It becomes an unfolding treasure. Part 2. Right intention, planting the seeds of goodness. They say every thought is a seed. If you plant weeds, you can't expect roses to bloom. That's the truth about the mind. Whatever you sow inside, eventually, you will harvest in your life. Let me tell you a story. There was once a merchant who built his business on suspicion. He never trusted anyone, his customers, his partners, not even his closest friends. Every deal, every handshake was shadowed by doubt. He believed this made him clever, that being cautious and mistrusting would protect him. But over time, people grew tired. Customers drifted away. Friends stopped calling. Even his family pulled back, exhausted by the heavy atmosphere of suspicion. In the end, he was left with wealth but no relationships, success but no joy. His thoughts of distrust had shaped his world, and his world mirrored them back to him. This is why, in Buddhism, right intention, or right thought, is considered so essential. Because the way you think becomes the way you live. If your mind is full of greed, you will see the world through hunger. If your mind is burning with anger, everything will feel like a fight. If your mind is clouded by ignorance, life will seem confusing and unfair. But when your intentions are rooted in kindness, compassion, and wisdom, the seeds you plant will grow into peace, trust, and prosperity, not just for yourself, but for everyone around you. Think about it. How many of our actions each day are born from an unconscious thought? A small irritation that turns into harsh words. A flash of jealousy that grows into resentment. A single anxious thought that multiplies until it drowns out joy. The Buddha taught that by training the mind, we can choose which seeds to water. We can recognize when a harmful thought arises and gently let it go, choosing instead to nurture thoughts of generosity, patience, and love. Here's a question for you. What seeds are you planting today? When you wake up in the morning, do you start with gratitude, or do you jump straight into worry? When you interact with others, do you assume the best in them, or do you expect the worst? These small choices shape the atmosphere of your entire life. I've experienced this myself. There were times when my mind was full of what ifs, what if I fail, what if they don't like me, what if I'm not enough. Those thoughts seemed harmless, but they drained my energy and made me see obstacles everywhere. Only when I began to shift, asking instead, what if this is an opportunity? What if this helps me grow? What if today brings something unexpected and beautiful? Only then did life begin to open up. The outer circumstances didn't suddenly change, but my inner lens did. And that shift in intention changed everything. Right intention is not about controlling every single thought. It's about gently aligning your mind toward compassion and clarity. It's about noticing when you've wandered into the weeds and choosing, again and again, to plant flowers instead. Over time, those flowers spread, creating a garden of peace within you and around you. So I invite you to reflect. If your thoughts today are seeds, what kind of harvest are you preparing for tomorrow? Will it be a field of weeds that choke your joy, or a blooming garden that nourishes you and others? The choice is yours in every single moment. Right intention is the quiet power of choosing love over fear, trust over suspicion, and generosity over greed. It is the soil in which true prosperity takes root. Part 3. Right speech, words that create harmony. They say a single harsh word can shatter a family, while a single kind word can save an entire lifetime. Think about that. Words may seem small, but they carry the power to wound or to heal, to divide or to unite. I want to share a story. There was once a son who had been estranged from his father for decades. They carried anger, resentment, and silence like heavy stones in their hearts. The distance grew so wide that neither could cross it. But one day, the son gathered his courage and simply said, "Dad, I love you." Just 4 words. Yet in that moment, the wall of bitterness crumbled. Years of pain melted into tears, and what seemed impossible, reconciliation, suddenly became real. It wasn't wealth or power that healed them. It was a word spoken from the heart. This is the essence of right speech in Buddhism. It's not only about avoiding lies or harsh language. It's about speaking truth in a way that nourishes, heals, and builds harmony. Our words are like seeds. We can plant weeds of gossip, criticism, and anger, or we can plant flowers of honesty, kindness, and encouragement. Over time, those seeds grow into the relationships that surround us. Let me ask you this. How often do we speak without really thinking of the impact? A quick sarcastic comment, a sharp reply, a careless piece of gossip. These may seem harmless in the moment, but they linger in the hearts of others, shaping how they feel about themselves and about us. On the other hand, a single sentence of encouragement can stay with someone for years, giving them strength when they need it most. I've seen this in my own life. Once, I received a message from an old friend I hadn't spoken to in years. It was just one line. "I still remember the time you encouraged me when I was struggling. I've never forgotten it." I had barely remembered saying it, but for him, those words became a turning point. That's the unseen power of speech. You never know how deeply your words might touch another life. Right speech invites us to become more conscious. To pause before speaking and ask, is it true? Is it necessary? Is it kind? Imagine if every conversation began with those questions. How many arguments could be softened? How many relationships could be healed? How much more harmony could exist in our families, our workplaces, and even our world? It doesn't mean we should avoid honesty or always speak sweetly. Sometimes truth can be difficult, but when spoken with compassion and respect, even hard truths can bring healing instead of harm. It's not about silencing ourselves, it's about aligning our words with wisdom and love. So here's something to reflect on. What words have you spoken today? Were they words that built bridges, or words that built walls? And what words do you wish someone had spoken to you when you needed them most? Maybe that's exactly the gift you can give to another. Because in the end, Prosperity in relationships, in communities, in our very own hearts, begins with the words we choose. Words of truth. Words of kindness. Words that bring people together instead of tearing them apart. That is the path of right speech. And when we walk it, we don't just change conversations, we change lives. Part 4. Right action, choosing deeds that plant seeds of blessing. They say, what your hands do, your life will reap. Think about that for a moment. Every action we take is like dropping a seed into the soil of our destiny. Some seeds grow into trees of peace and abundance, while others bear only thorns of regret. I remember hearing the story of a man who, out of greed, chose to harm others, stealing, cheating, even taking lives to secure his own wealth. For a while, he looked powerful. He had money, he had influence. But what he didn't realize was that each act of harm was slowly draining him. In the end, he lost not only his fortune, but also the trust of those around him. What remained was emptiness and fear, because no matter how much he gained, he could never feel at peace. Now pause and reflect, what about us? How often do we excuse small actions, thinking, it's just a little lie, a little shortcut, a little harm? But little by little, those choices shape the person we become. And when our actions lack integrity, even if no one else sees, our heart knows. That inner unrest is the greatest poverty. The Buddha taught that true prosperity begins with right action. It means choosing to live in a way that does not harm, avoiding killing, stealing, and engaging in dishonorable behaviors. It's not about being perfect. It's about understanding that the energy we put into the world will circle back to us. When our hands are clean, our sleep is peaceful. When our deeds are honest, trust naturally surrounds us. That trust is more valuable than gold, because it creates opportunities, deep connections, and a sense of safety in the world. This is the kind of wealth no one can steal from you. So the real question is, what kind of seeds are you planting today? Every act, small or large, is a chance to sow blessings that your future self will harvest. If you want a life of abundance, start with the wealth of integrity. Right action is not a restriction, it's the soil where freedom and true prosperity grow. Part 5. Right livelihood, earning a living that nourishes body and soul. We often think prosperity is simply having enough to eat, enough to spend. But let me ask you, what good is a full table if every bite carries the taste of guilt? True abundance cannot exist when the conscience is restless. There's an old story about a hunter. For years, his livelihood depended on taking the lives of animals. He had money, food, and even admiration from some. Yet, every night, he wrestled with a quiet unease. One day, he made a choice. He put down his bow and picked up the plow. Farming was hard. His hands blistered, his back ached. But something changed. For the first time, his heart was light. He no longer needed to silence the voice inside. Each grain of rice he grew became not just food, but peace. Now, think about our modern lives. How many people today work jobs that drain them, or worse, jobs that profit by harming others? Maybe it's not as obvious as hunting, but it could be industries that exploit workers, damage the environment, or sell illusions instead of truth. We can survive that way, yes. But can we thrive? Can we truly call it prosperity if our spirit shrinks while our bank account grows? The Buddha's teaching on right livelihood is a compass. It reminds us to choose a path of work that sustains not only the body, but also the heart. To earn without causing harm, to others, to ourselves, to the world we share. It doesn't mean the path is always easy. Honest work can sometimes be the harder road. But over time, it builds the kind of wealth no market crash can take away: peace of mind, respect, and trust. And here's something I've learned personally. When your livelihood aligns with your values, energy flows differently. Work stops feeling like a burden and becomes part of your practice, part of your offering to the world. You don't just make a living, you make meaning. So I leave you with this question. Is your work feeding both your body and your soul? Because real prosperity isn't measured by what you earn, it's measured by how you earn it. Right livelihood is the foundation of a lasting and fulfilling abundance. Part 6. Right effort, the power of steady persistence. There's a saying, even a drop of water, falling over and over, can carve a hole through stone. Think about that for a moment. Not because the water is strong, but because it is steady. And that's the heart of right effort, persistence that transforms our lives, one small step at a time. There's a story of a young student who once struggled with concentration and doubt. His teacher gave him a simple task: recite a short verse every day, no matter what. Just one verse. At first, it felt insignificant. What difference could a few lines make? But days turned into months, months into years. And something remarkable happened. His mind grew sharp, his heart softened, and his wisdom deepened. What began as a tiny daily effort eventually shaped him into a wise and respected teacher himself. Now let's bring this into our own lives. How often do we give up because progress feels too slow? How many times do we start with excitement, only to stop when results don't appear immediately? We live in a world that glorifies instant success, but the Buddha reminded us that true growth is rarely instant. It is built on quiet, consistent effort, choosing again and again to turn away from what harms us and toward what nurtures us. Right effort is not about exhausting ourselves or pushing non-stop. It's about directing our energy wisely, letting go of harmful habits, nurturing wholesome ones, and protecting the clarity of our mind. It's the courage to keep going when it's easier to quit. I've seen this in my own journey too. The mornings when meditation felt empty, the times when kindness seemed unnoticed, the days when discipline felt heavy, those were the very moments building the foundation of strength. Looking back, it wasn't grand achievements that changed me, but the small, steady acts repeated over time. So here's a question for you. What's the one small practice you can commit to every single day, something that waters the seeds of goodness in you? Because remember, prosperity and freedom are not sudden miracles. They are the harvest of effort, patiently cultivated, drop by drop. Right effort is that quiet determination that carries us farther than raw ambition ever could. And just like water shaping stone, it is persistence, not force, that opens the path to wisdom and true success. Part 7. Right mindfulness, guarding the heart in every moment. They say the richest person isn't the one who owns the most, but the one who doesn't lose the present moment. And if you pause to reflect, isn't that true? What good is wealth, success, or recognition if our hearts are never here to enjoy it? I once heard of a wealthy merchant who spent his days consumed by worry about tomorrow, new deals, future risks, possible losses. Even while eating, his mind was racing. Even while resting, his heart was restless. Eventually, his body gave in. Exhaustion became his constant companion, and peace was nowhere to be found. Contrast this with another man, who though he had less in possessions, lived fully in each breath, tasting his food with gratitude, listening deeply when others spoke, walking without hurry. His wealth was invisible, but it was real: joy, clarity, and freedom. That's the essence of right mindfulness. It's the practice of coming home to the now, feeling the breath, noticing our steps, being aware of what we are thinking and how it shapes our actions. Without mindfulness, we become prisoners of illusions, running after what's not yet here, or clinging to what has already passed. With mindfulness, we break free. Think about it. How often are we physically present but mentally absent? Sitting with family, yet scrolling our phones. Eating, yet lost in thought. Driving, yet already at tomorrow's meeting. And then we wonder why life feels empty, like sand slipping through our fingers. Mindfulness teaches us to stop running, to see that the present is not a stepping stone, it is life itself. In my own journey, I've noticed that the moments I remember most vividly aren't the big achievements. They are the small ones, watching the sunlight flicker through leaves, the silence after laughter with a friend, the stillness of a quiet morning. These moments only reveal themselves when we are fully there. Right mindfulness doesn't erase life's storms, but it steadies us in the middle of them. It's like the anchor that holds a ship when waves grow wild. Problems still exist, but they don't sweep us away. So let me ask you, when was the last time you truly lived 1 minute, just 1 minute, without rushing ahead or looking back? What would happen if you gave yourself that gift today? Mindfulness is not about escaping reality. It's about seeing reality more clearly. And in that clarity, we find a treasure more valuable than gold, peace, presence, and the joy of being alive, right here, right now. Part 8. Right concentration, resting the mind, unlocking wisdom. They say muddy water cannot reflect your face, but when the water settles, it mirrors the entire sky. The same is true of our minds. A restless mind, full of noise and scattered thoughts, cannot see clearly. But a mind that knows how to rest, how to be still, becomes a mirror for truth and wisdom. Let me share a story. There was a man who had carried heavy burdens all his life, worries about family, money, and the judgments of others. One day, he began to sit quietly, just breathing, letting go of one thought at a time. At first, it was hard, like trying to calm a wild horse. But with patience, something shifted. The storms inside grew quieter. His mind became clear, like a polished mirror. From that clarity, he saw things he never noticed before, what truly mattered, what was just illusion, and how peace was already within him all along. That is the gift of right concentration. It's not about forcing the mind or escaping reality. It's about gathering our scattered attention into one place, like sunlight focused through a lens, capable of lighting a fire. A concentrated mind is powerful, creative, and deeply peaceful. Without it, we are constantly distracted, pulled in 100 directions, never touching the depth of life. Think about it. How often do you sit down to rest, yet your mind is busier than your body? How often do you read a page, but forget every word, or talk to someone while secretly drifting elsewhere? Distraction robs us of wisdom and joy. Concentration returns them. In my own practice, I've noticed that when the mind settles, even for a few minutes, life feels different. Problems that seemed overwhelming lose their grip. Solutions arise naturally. Compassion flows more easily. It's as if silence itself whispers the answers we've been chasing. Right concentration is not just for monks in monasteries. It's for anyone who wants to live fully. Whether you meditate, pray, garden, or simply breathe mindfully, you can train your mind to rest. And when it rests, wisdom awakens. True prosperity doesn't come from having more, but from seeing clearly. And clarity is born from a mind that knows how to be still. That stillness is the hidden treasure of right concentration, the gateway to wisdom, peace, and a life aligned with truth. Part 9. The Noble Eightfold Path, a complete road to prosperity. A jewel only shines when all its 8 facets catch the light. In the same way, a human life becomes truly prosperous only when the 8 steps of the Noble Path are present and balanced. If even one is missing, the brilliance is incomplete. There's an old story of a king who longed for the secret to ruling wisely. He had wealth, armies, and power, yet his land was plagued by unrest. One day, a wise sage told him, "If you want peace in your kingdom, walk the path of 8 truths: right view, right thought, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration." The king practiced them, not just in governing, but in his own heart. Slowly, his people found harmony. Prosperity returned, not because of gold or war, but because wisdom and compassion became the foundation of the nation. That story is a mirror for our own lives. We may chase success in one area, career, money, reputation, yet if we neglect the other dimensions of life, we feel hollow. The Eightfold Path reminds us that prosperity is whole. It isn't just about income, it's about integrity. It isn't just about progress, it's about peace. It isn't just about outward success, it's about inner freedom. Think about it. If you have right speech, but not right effort, your words may be kind but lack the strength of action. If you have right livelihood, but not right concentration, your work may be honest but your mind remains restless. Each facet supports the others, like beams of a house holding up the roof. Personally, I've noticed that when I lean too heavily on one practice, say, mindfulness, but ignore others, like right livelihood, life feels unsteady. But when I bring them together, even imperfectly, life gains a kind of balance. It's like music. One note alone is pleasant, but a symphony requires many instruments working in harmony. So, I invite you to reflect. Which of the 8 steps do you nurture daily? Which ones have you left in the shadows? The path doesn't demand perfection, only sincerity. Every small step strengthens the whole. The Eightfold Path is not just a philosophy, it's a blueprint for flourishing. When lived fully, it brings prosperity that no crisis can erase, because it doesn't depend on luck or circumstance. It comes from within, radiating outward, creating peace in your heart and abundance in your life. Part 10. Prosperity. A flame that shares its light never goes out. Imagine walking alone in the middle of the night, surrounded by darkness, unsure of which path leads you home. Suddenly, a kind stranger approaches, holding a lantern. They lean forward, and with one small gesture, they light your candle. Now, the road becomes visible. You feel safe. You know where to go. And yet, the flame in their lantern has not diminished, it still burns brightly. In fact, together, the two lights make the night less heavy, less frightening. This is the essence of true prosperity. It's not about hoarding what we have, whether it's wealth, knowledge, or love. It's about sharing it. When we share, our abundance doesn't shrink, it multiplies. Think about generosity in your own life. Have you ever given someone encouragement when they were down, or shared a meal when they were hungry? Did you notice how your own heart felt fuller in that moment? That warmth is a kind of wealth that no economy can measure, and yet it might be the most valuable wealth of all. Buddhist wisdom reminds us that prosperity is not just a private treasure to lock away. It's a living stream that flows through us, nourishing others and ourselves. When we hold back, we become like a stagnant pond, closed off, unmoving, slowly losing vitality. But when we let what we have circulate, our kindness, our resources, even our time, we become like a flowing river, always fresh, always alive. And here's the beautiful paradox. The more we give, the more we realize we were never lacking. Our worth is not in what we keep, but in what we allow to pass through us. Prosperity, in this sense, is not measured by accumulation, but by circulation. How many lives our light touches, how many hearts our presence warms. So the next time you think of prosperity, ask yourself, what flame am I carrying that could help someone else see their way forward? Because when you share your light, you don't just brighten their path, you make the whole world glow a little warmer. That's the secret. True prosperity is never just for one, it blossoms for all. Closing. My friends, prosperity is not about how much we can store away, but about how truthfully and wisely we choose to live. So often, the world teaches us to measure wealth by accumulation, by what we can grasp and hold tightly. But the Buddha's path points us toward a deeper kind of treasure, one that no thief, no loss, no passing of time can ever take away. The Eightfold Path is that treasure. It is not just a philosophy, but a living compass, a way of walking through this world with clarity, compassion, and strength. When you practice right view, right action, right mindfulness, you begin to discover that the richest life is not the one filled with possessions, but the one filled with peace. Think of it this way: money can disappear, health can fade, relationships can change. But the wealth of inner stability, the freedom of a clear conscience, the serenity of a calm heart, those endure. They become the foundation that supports you no matter what storms come your way. And here's the beautiful part: when you live this way, you don't just find prosperity for yourself, you become a source of it for others. Like a lamp that shines without losing its flame, your presence begins to guide those around you. Your calm inspires calm in others. Your compassion awakens compassion in them. Your wisdom lights paths that others may have thought were lost in the dark. So remember this: true prosperity is not about having. It is about being rooted in wisdom, being grounded in compassion, being free in heart and mind. Walk the Eightfold Path, and you will discover a kind of wealth that not only nourishes your own soul, but also radiates outward, blessing everyone you encounter. And perhaps, without even realizing it, you will become that gentle light that helps someone else find their way home.